They told you about tarot cards, painted symbols shuffled in silence, laid on velvet cloths, promising glimpses into your future. They told you about astrology, stars drawn into maps, constellations charted to reveal the fate of kings and the destiny of lovers. But they never told you that long before a single tarot card was painted, long before the first star was written into a zodiac sign, Africa was already reading the future. They never told you that African priests and priestesses, elders and diviners were already speaking with spirits, reading the language of shells, tracing patterns in sand, and listening to the whispered wisdom of dreams. They never told you that Africa's oracle systems are not ancient mysteries. They are living, breathing doorways to the divine. But why have these ancient systems been hidden? Why do so many know the names of European mystics, but have never heard of the Ifa oracle of the Yoruba, the cowrie shell divination of the Akan, the sand divination of the San, or the dream prophecy of the Dogon? Why is it that the world knows the cards of the tarot and the planets of the zodiac, but has forgotten the sacred opal chain of Orunmila, the sacred shell patterns of Mami Wata, or the dream visions of the ancestors? Is it because to remember them would be to remember that Africa was never spiritually blind, but spiritually sovereign? They didn't tell you that in the sacred groves of West Africa, priests and priestesses speak with the divine through the wisdom of Ifa, a system older than any book, whispered from the spirit of Orunmila himself. They didn't tell you that the Akan cast sacred cowrie shells, not to guess the future, but to reveal the hidden truth. They never told you that the sand people of southern Africa can read the wisdom of the earth itself, tracing patterns in sand that reveal the soul's path. They never told you that in the villages of Mali, the Dogons speak of dreams that travel between worlds, where ancestors appear to offer guidance, warning, and prophecy. Today, you will learn what they never taught you. Today, you will enter the sacred circle of African divination. You will see how the ancient seers read the future, spoke with spirits, and guided kings and queens. This is not just a story. It is a memory, a return to a forgotten power. Before the cards were painted, before the stars were charted into constellations, Africa was already speaking to the divine. Not in the quiet rooms of mystics with crystal balls, but in the open air, beneath sacred trees, beside flowing rivers, around the fires where elders whispered to the spirits. Divination was not a game, not a performance. It was a sacred conversation, a bridge between the world of the living and the world of the unseen. In Africa, the future was not a mystery to be guessed. It was a path to be revealed. Divination was not just the work of priests and priestesses. It was a sacred science, passed down through generations, learned through initiation, refined through discipline. It was a gift and a burden, a duty and an honor. Those who practiced it were not simply fortune tellers. They were guardians of truth, messengers of the ancestors, vessels of divine wisdom. They did not simply predict the future. They revealed the present. They spoke the unsaid, uncovered the hidden, and realigned the lost. Across the continent, divination took many forms, each a doorway to the same mystery. In West Africa, the Yoruba people consulted the Ifa oracle, the sacred words of Orunmila, the god of wisdom and destiny. The Babalawo, the priests of Ifa, would cast the sacred opale chain or read the palm nuts, receiving verses that spoke the truth of the seeker's soul. These were not random rhymes. They were ancient scriptures, each one a path, each one a revelation. The seeker did not merely ask questions. They were called to align with their destiny. In Ghana, the Akan people used cowrie shells, not as currency, but as sacred voices, The priest or priestess would cast them upon a sacred mat, reading their patterns like letters written by the spirits. Some shells faced up, some down, each one a sign, a message, a story. A blessing could become a warning. A curse could be reversed. The shells spoke, but only those who understood the language could listen. In southern Africa, the Sand people used sand itself as a sacred script. Patterns traced upon the earth revealed truths that could not be seen with the eyes. The sand carried the voice of the earth, the memory of the ancestors, the heartbeat of the spirit world. The diviner would trace, read, and interpret, watching the winds that whispered across the dust, feeling the earth beneath their fingers as a living map. But beyond shells and sand, there was the most sacred oracle of all, the oracle of dreams. Among the Dogon of Mali, dreams were not just visions, they were messages. The ancestors spoke through them, warning of dangers, revealing hidden paths, offering blessings. To dream was to travel. To sleep was to open the door between worlds. And the dream seers, those who could read these sacred visions, were not just dreamers. They were prophets. This was not superstition. This was not guesswork. This was the sacred art of divination, a system of revealing, not inventing, a way of aligning the human soul with its true path, a reminder that nothing is hidden to those who know how to listen. In the heart of Yoruba spirituality, there is a voice older than memory, wiser than time, and deeper than the silence of the forest. That voice belongs to Orunmila, the god of wisdom, prophecy, and destiny. And his words are not written in stone or whispered in dreams. They are spoken through the sacred system of Ifa, a divine oracle that has guided kings, healed the lost, and revealed hidden truths for thousands of years. Ifa is not a tool. It is a doorway, a living conversation between the seeker and the spirit world. Ifa is not learned lightly. Those who serve as its priests, the Babalawo, fathers of secrets, do not choose this path. They are chosen. Through initiation, discipline, and divine calling, they become living vessels of wisdom. Their training is long, their tests many. They learn the sacred verses of Ifa, the Odu. Ifa, not as poems, but as divine messages. Each verse is a map. Each story is a revelation. And when they stand before the sacred grove, when they cast the sacred opal chain or read the palm nuts, they are not guessing. They are listening. The process is sacred. The seeker comes, not with demands, but with humility. They sit before the Babalawo, who prepares the sacred tools, the opal chain, a sacred palm seed chain that falls in patterns that speak, or the Aiken, sacred palm nuts that are counted, read, and interpreted. These are not just objects. They are voices. They are the language of Orunmila, who whispers truth through them. As the chain falls, as the nuts are cast, the Babalawo reads the pattern. It is not a random design. It is a verse, a sacred text spoken by the divine. There are 256 Odu Ifa, the sacred signs of Ifa, and each one holds hundreds of verses. Stories of creation, of heroes and gods, of love and betrayal, of blessings and curses. The verse that appears is not just a prediction. It is a message, a mirror of the seeker's soul, a map of their destiny. Sometimes it is a warning, sometimes it is a blessing, sometimes it is a test. But the message is not the end. It is a beginning. The seeker is called to align with what Ifa has revealed. Sometimes this means performing a ritual, making an offering, changing a path, or asking for forgiveness. Because Ifa is not just about knowing, it is about realigning. It is about finding harmony with destiny. In the Yoruba worldview, nothing happens by chance. Every life has a path. Every soul has a purpose. But sometimes we lose our way. Sometimes we forget. Ifa is the divine reminder. It does not force. It reveals. It does not command. It guides. For generations, kings and queens, warriors and healers, merchants and mothers have sat before the Babalawo, listening to the voice of Orunmila. They have found courage, received healing, avoided danger, or embraced their true calling. They did not simply believe. They listened. And in listening, they remembered who they were meant to be. Ifa is not a superstition. It is not a game. It is a sacred technology, a way of speaking to the divine, a way of hearing the voice of destiny. In the ancient kingdoms of West Africa, there is a language that does not use words, a language that is older than ink, older than scrolls, older even than spoken stories. It is the language of the shells, sacred cowrie shells, whose whispers have guided kings, healed the broken, and revealed the unseen. Cowrie shells are not just ocean treasures. They are voices. They are eyes. They are sacred messengers of the divine. Among the Akan of Ghana, the sacred shells are cast by the priest or priestess, not as a game of chance, but as a conversation with the spirit world. They are not just scattered. They are laid with intention, their faces, open or closed, carrying meaning. Each position, each pattern, is a sentence, a story, a warning, a blessing. The shells are cast upon a sacred mat, an altar where the invisible speaks to the visible. But only those who know the language can read what they say. The priestess does not simply look at the shells. She listens. She watches the way they fall, the way they face, the way they touch. Some shells fall open, speaking of blessings, clarity, truth revealed. Others fall closed, hinting at hidden secrets, obstacles, or hidden enemies. But it is not just the shells alone. It is the spirit that speaks through them. The seeker does not come simply for answers. They come for truth. But cowrie shell divination is not only an Akan practice. It is found across West Africa, where it takes different names but carries the same sacred power. Among the Yoruba, it is known as Marindan Logan, the 16 cowries of the Orisha. The shells speak on behalf of the gods. Ifa may speak through the opal chain, but the Orisha speak through the shells. When the shells are cast, they reveal which Orisha is speaking, which force is moving in the seeker's life. It may be Ocean, goddess of love and rivers offering sweetness and healing. It may be Ogun, god of iron and war, warning of a battle to come. It may be Eshu, the trickster and messenger, reminding the seeker that destiny is a path, but the road is not always straight. The shells do not lie. They do not flatter. They reveal. Sometimes they offer blessings, sometimes warnings. Sometimes they speak of hidden enemies, unspoken desires, forgotten promises. Sometimes they tell the seeker to offer a sacrifice, not because the gods are greedy, but because balance must be restored. Sometimes they tell the seeker to change their ways, not out of punishment, but out of mercy. But the shells are not simply objects. They are sacred. To touch them without permission is to invite misfortune. To disrespect them is to disrespect the spirits. They must be washed, blessed, spoken to, and honored. They are more than tools. They are voices of the divine, ancient wisdom written in the curve of a shell. For generations, the cowrie shells have spoken in sacred groves, in hidden shrines, in the quiet corners of elders' homes. They have been used to protect, to guide, to heal, to reveal. They are not random. They are not superstition. They are the voice of spirit speaking in the simplest, yet most profound of languages, the language of destiny. In the deserts of southern Africa, where the wind whispers across endless dunes and the earth holds secrets older than time, the sand people read the wisdom of the earth itself. They do not look to the stars. They do not cast shells. They trace patterns in the sand. It is called sand divination, a sacred art where the earth is not just ground to be walked upon, but a living canvas, a voice that speaks to those who know how to listen. For the sand, the earth is not silent. It remembers. It watches. It reveals. The diviner begins with a clean patch of sand, not just any sand, but sacred ground, earth that has not been touched, that carries the pure breath of nature. With careful fingers, they begin to trace lines, circles, dots, sacred symbols that seem to dance beneath their hands. The pattern is not random. It is a language. It is the voice of the spirit world made visible. To the untrained eye, it is just lines in the dust, but to the diviner, it is a message, a map of the seeker's soul. As the lines form, as the shapes appear, the diviner's voice rises, sometimes whispering, sometimes chanting. They do not simply read the sand. They speak with it. They call upon the spirits of the land, the ancestors who watch, the animal guardians who walk between worlds. They ask for guidance, for clarity, for truth, and the earth responds. The sand can speak of many things. It can reveal the cause of an illness, not just in the body, but in the soul. It can speak of a hidden enemy, a broken promise, an unresolved grief. It can tell of a lost child, a forgotten blessing, a destiny unfulfilled. But the sand is not always gentle. Sometimes it reveals hard truths. Sometimes it shows a path that the seeker does not want to see. But it is always honest. Sand divination is not just a practice of the sand. Across Africa, the earth has always been sacred. Among the Berbers of North Africa, the desert wind itself is a messenger. Among the Dogon of Mali, the dust is the language of Amma, the creator. Among the Himba, the sacred ochre earth is used not only for healing, but for sacred messages. The earth is not just soil. It is memory. It is spirit. It is the breath of those who came before. But for the sand, the earth is more than sacred. It is family. There are people who walk lightly upon the land, who hunt with respect, who sing to the stars, and who trace the wind like a grandmother's whisper. The divination is not a ritual of power. It is a conversation, a reminder that to know your destiny, you must be willing to touch the ground, to trace the soil, to remember that wisdom is not always written in books. The sand is silent to those who do not listen. But to those who know, it is a voice. It is a guide. It is a mirror. The sand diviner does not claim to see the future. They simply read the earth, the same earth that has watched your steps, held your ancestors, and whispered your name long before you were born. In the quiet darkness of night, when the world sleeps and the stars burn like watchful eyes, the soul travels. It wanders through shadows. It steps between worlds. It speaks to the dead, and it listens to the living who are yet to be born. For an African spirituality, dreams are not just the mind's escape. They are a sacred doorway, a bridge between the seen and the unseen, a language spoken by ancestors, gods, and hidden spirits. Dream prophecy is not a superstition. It is a sacred science, a way of receiving messages from the universe without ever leaving your bed. Among the Dogon of Mali, dreams are not just visions. They are memories of the soul's journey. The Dogon believe that the soul is not trapped within the body, but free to travel while the body rests. It wanders the sacred realms, meets ancestors, converses with spirits, receives wisdom, and sometimes brings back warnings. The elders teach that not all dreams are simple. Some are messages, some are prophecies, some are tests, and those who are wise know how to tell the difference. But the Dogon are not alone. Across Africa, the dream is sacred. In the Zulu tradition, the ancestors speak through dreams. A dream of water may be a blessing. A dream of snakes may be a warning. A dream of an old woman may be an invitation to listen. For that woman may be an ancestor come to teach. But the dream must be interpreted, and this is where the elders, the diviners, and the sacred dreamers are needed. They are not simply dreamers. They are guides, interpreters of the sacred language of sleep. In Yoruba spirituality, dreams are understood as messages from the Orisha, the divine spirits who guide human life. To dream of Oshun is to receive sweetness, love, and healing. To dream of Ogun is to be warned of battle or to find courage. To dream of Eshu, the trickster, is to be reminded that destiny is a choice, but the road is not always straight. Those who wake from such dreams do not simply forget. They consult the priestess, the Babalawo, the elder who can explain what the spirit world is trying to say. But dreams are not always comforting. Sometimes they are shadows, warnings of danger, signs of betrayal, visions of death. Among the Akan, a dream of death is not always a curse, but a transformation. It is said that when a grandmother appears in a dream with a gift, it is not just a blessing. It is a memory of the wisdom she left behind. A dream of a snake may mean danger, or it may mean healing, for the snake is both poison and medicine. And then there are the sacred dreams, dreams that do not simply reveal, but command. Dreams that wake the dreamer in sweat, with a voice still echoing in their ears. A call to become a healer, a warning to avoid a journey, a prophecy of a child yet to be born. These dreams are not to be ignored. For in African spirituality, the dream is not a fantasy. It is a conversation. It is a test. It is a mirror. In ancient times, those who had such dreams were not mocked. They were honored. They were brought before the elders, who listened, who questioned, who guided. They were taught to respect the gift of dreaming, to walk with one foot in this world and one foot in the spirit world. Because the dream is a voice, not of the mind, but of the soul. To know African spirituality is to know that sleep is not a silence. It is a journey, and the dreams you dream are not just yours. They are the whispers of ancestors, the lessons of spirits, the memories of who you were, and the prophecies of who you are meant to become. When the colonizers arrived, they did not come with respect. They did not come to learn, to honor, or to understand. They came to conquer, not just the land, but the spirit. They saw the priest who spoke with shells, the priestesses who danced with spirits, the elders who traced wisdom in the sand, and they called them witches. They called them sorcerers. They called them heathens. But what they feared was not madness. It was power. The power of a people who knew how to speak with the divine without needing books, churches, or foreign tongues. They saw Africa's sacred oracles, and they sought to silence them. They did not simply preach a new religion. They criminalized the old. The sacred groves where the Babalawo spoke with Orunmila were cut down. The shells that had whispered the truth for generations were burned, shattered, buried in the ground. The sacred sand where the sand traced the voice of the earth was forbidden. The dream seers, those who could walk between worlds in their sleep, were mocked, ridiculed, branded as insane. The elders who knew the sacred verses, the chants, the prophecies, that they were silenced. Some were forced to convert, others were threatened, and those who refused were killed. But the greatest violence was not the destruction of shrines. It was the rewriting of memory. The colonizers taught the children to forget. They told them that the shells were nothing but beads, that the sand was only dirt, that dreams were meaningless illusions. They replaced the sacred stories of Ifa, of the ancestors, of the spirits, with stories of saints and angels who never knew their land. They taught the children to fear their own elders, to mock their own mothers, to laugh at the old ones who spoke of oracles and prophecy. They turned the sacred into a joke, the divine into a demon, the voice of the spirits into madness. And the people learned to hide. The babalawos spoke in whispers, meeting in secret. The priestesses of the cowrie shells hid their gifts, pretending to be healers while they read the truth in secret. The dreamers lied, saying they had no visions, while the ancestors still whispered in their sleep. The diviners traced the sand behind their homes, watching for the eyes of those who would call them heretics. But what the colonizers never understood is that you cannot kill a spirit. You cannot burn a whisper. You cannot silence a dream. The oracles did not die. They went underground. They survived in secret chants, in hidden altars, in the quiet wisdom of grandmothers who never forgot. They waited, not for permission but for remembrance. Because even in silence the spirits speak. Even in darkness the shells still whisper. Even in the forgotten corners of the soul, the dreams still call. African divination was never truly erased. It was buried, but it is rising again. The silence is ending. The whispers are returning. Across Africa and the diaspora, the sacred oracles are rising again, not as relics, but as living wisdom. The shells that once spoke in secret are now cast openly, their patterns revealing truth, their whispers guiding the lost. The sand that was once forbidden is traced again by sacred fingers, telling stories of healing, protection, and destiny. The dreams that were laughed at are now honored, their messages written down, their visions shared, their voices embraced. This is not a return to the past. This is a reclamation of what was never truly lost. The Babalawo who cast the sacred opal chain does not simply speak of the future. He restores balance. The priestess who reads the cowrie shells is not guessing. She is revealing what the spirits already know. The dreamer who speaks of visions is not a fool. They are a prophet. The sand diviner who traces the dust is not playing. They are speaking with the earth itself. But this reawakening is not just a trend. It is a remembering that Africa was never silent, that its spirits were never absent, that its wisdom was never broken. It is the grandchildren of those who once hid their shells, who are now casting them without fear. It is the daughters of those who were mocked as dreamers who are now speaking with the ancestors openly. It is the sons of those who were forced to bow, who are now standing tall, remembering the words of Orunmila, the whispers of Mami Wata, the songs of the ancestors who never forgot. They told you that prophecy came from cards. They told you that destiny was written in stars drawn on paper. But they never told you that before tarot, before astrology, Africa was already reading the soul. That before the West spoke of magic, Africa had already mapped the sacred. That before they called themselves mystics, your ancestors were already speaking with the divine. The African oracles are not gone. They are not a myth. They are not dead. They are living. They are waiting. And they are calling. If you listen closely, you will hear them. In the shells, in the sand, in the dreams that wake you at night. The spirits have never stopped speaking. Only we stopped listening. But now, we remember. If this story stirred something within you, do not let it fade. Like this video. Share it. Subscribe. And remember, the divine never left. The oracles never died. They only waited for you.